Hello, everyone. Good morning. Welcome to this launch of the position paper, Dairy for Nutrition, Employment and Sustainability. I hope everybody is able to see the presentation. Me as a host, I've muted all of you so we can make sure that we're not talking through one another. I will unmute you in a minute, but please make sure that if you're not talking that you're muted. Otherwise it's going to be a bit of a messy launch, I think. Let me start by introducing myself and my co-host. My co-host is Wim Goris of AgriProFocus. And me, myself, I'm Judith Jacobs. I'm from the Food and Business Knowledge Platform. These two organizations are currently in a process of forming the Netherlands Food Partnership. We will tell you a little bit more about that later. We have introduced a poll when you were entering this webinar to see a little bit who is actually in this webinar. And I will now ask Wim to show the results of this poll so we can see who is in here, or at least have an idea. So there it is, the results. As you can see, there are quite a lot of people from the Netherlands here. We also have some representation from Africa and Asia. We have a little bit of majority of males, but also the female participants are here. And we have a little bit of an older audience, at least it's not the category of youth as the UN is following. So we have more people from 35 years and older, but also some below 35. Where are you from? A lot of people from development organizations, as you can see, but also businesses in dairy, some education, some research, some government, and also some other. But I think we have quite a nice representation here in this. So I think now you see the results. Sorry for that, we didn't share it. But as you can see, quite a lot of people from the Netherlands. Male and female ratio, a little bit more male people here, and 35 years and older. And a nice spread over the different organizations. All right, so let me start with the program. You have all received an invitation with the program, so I guess this is not new to you. Please put some questions and comments in the chat. We will address these during the Q&A. This session is being recorded and the participants will receive a link to this presentation, also a report of the launch with the questions and the presentations of the people who are presenting. So let us start with introducing the paper. Mrs. Karen Anderweg, we asked to do this. Unfortunately, she could not be herself in this meeting. So we actually made a video clip where she is going to share how the position paper came about and what she did as a lead author.
Today we launched the Dutch dairy position paper, and I'd like you to show you the first print copy.
Thanks a lot, Wim.
How did it come about?
Yeah, it has been an honor to coordinate the development of this paper together with many experts in dairy development from the Netherlands. It has been quite a long and intense journey, because it started all with the NEADAP project, the Netherlands East Africa Dairy Partnership, a partnership of different organizations who work on dairy development in emerging economies. And the NEADAP partnership organized a dairy event, Dairy the Motor for Healthy Growth, in Nairobi in August 2019. During that event, there were different working sessions where the participants worked on different themes. And those themes are the basis for this paper. The draft of this paper was discussed during a second stakeholder event in Veenendaal, November 2019. And the input of those two stakeholder events and of many experts have eventually led to this paper.
So what's new in this position paper? Some participants may remember the Milking to Potential process from 6 years ago.
Yeah, the Milking to Potential paper from 2014 has served as a leading strategic framework for dairy development around the world. And what's new in this paper is that it takes a food system perspective, meaning that it's not looking at dairy on its own, but that it's looking at the contribution that dairy has in the food system. That also makes you think about what the outcomes could be of the food system. For the dairy development paper, we have chosen 3 objectives, which are in line with the policy for global food security, which are affordable, safe and nutritious food, improved livelihoods and gainful employment, and 3, sustaining the agroecological base. And especially the part of nutrition is new in the dairy development thinking. Because it's not about producing as much dairy as possible or as cheap as possible. It's about finding a very good and nutritional addition to people's diet.
So the paper has an action agenda for the Dutch contribution to dairy development in Africa and Asia. So what do you hope will be achieved?
Well, first of all, I think the world changed drastically between finalizing the draft of this paper and today the launch of the paper. We finalized the paper early 2020, just before the outbreak of COVID-19. And I think the current pandemic will tremendously change our food system and also food security, and the real effects and impact of the pandemic still has to be seen. But I hope and I think that this paper and the action agenda can contribute to realizing sustainable and resilient food systems. But this paper is also an invitation, because the Dutch are not the only ones to love dairy. And we are also not the only one working on realizing food security around the world. So this paper also hopes to inspire other international organizations to join forces and together work with us on securing dairy development.
So what is your main takeaway from this paper?
I think there are 3 takeaways. 1, dairy is part of the wider food system. Dairy development support should also be considered in the light of how it contributes to the wider food system. 2, dairy can contribute to nutrition, employment and sustainability. And 3, collaboration is key to achieve this. And I would like to invite everyone to collaborate and to work together.
So how's the milk here?
Good. Yeah. Cheers, Wim.
Cheers.
So that was the introduction of Karin, the lead author of this paper. Next item on the program is stakeholder reflections. So we're going to hear some reflections on this position paper and also especially the action agenda. I would like to invite Marcel Nijnath if he is already here. I'm looking at my co-host to see whether Marcel
Sorry, Marcel's not joined yet.
He has not joined yet. All right, so then we go to Nienke.
Yes.
Hope that Marcel will be there in a few minutes. So Nienke is working at Triple Dairy. She's also part of the EARNet consortium, which is also working on dairy in Eastern Africa. And she will give her first reflections on the action agenda from her point of view. Nienke,
yes.
The floor is yours. Welcome.
Yes, can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Great.
I got a thumbs up from my co-host, so I think we're
okay. Great. Thank you, Judith, for inviting me to give my vision, our vision, on the presented position paper. I believe it's an impressive report that may hopefully lead to a successful outroll also of the action agenda. So my name is Nienke Dijkstra. I'm here on behalf of our company Triple Dairy. Triple Dairy is a new initiative of Blessed Dairies. Blessed Dairies that has a massive amount of experience in the international dairy sector. And it acknowledged the need to focus more on knowledge transition and on practical training where skills are trained, but then in a new way. And therefore, Triple Dairy was started in March in a strong partnership with Wageningen University and with the ERIS Group, a very experienced education institute in the Netherlands. I'm 43. I have a background in agriculture through my studies and as a dairy farmer myself. And also I have experience in education as a teacher. So during my professional experiences gained at Best Dairies, where I work for 15 years now, I started thinking and wondering about the way we pass on our experience in dairy farming in the world. Because despite of all the many projects and all the very experienced consultants and trainers and teachers, the progress is slow. And of course, we have to take into account all the influences that are out of our control, but also we should rethink and reconsider the way we do it. So the way we transfer the knowledge. The approach in transfer of knowledge is a key factor to the impact of those lessons. And the impact should, of course, be that positive change takes place. So it needs to be individual and it needs to address the personal learning motivation and attitude. And also it should be applicable for the individual situation. And this counts for any level, for any country, any individual. So we have embraced the idea of long life learning. A dairy professional, in our opinion, should continue learning throughout his professional life and also always have access to knowledge. And for a few years now, together with the ERIS group, Mr. Harm Holleman, I hope he is present, we are breathing on this idea of launching a digital learning platform offering learning pathways both for the formal learning and for informal learning. And the vision is that it should be blended, a blended approach, blended learning approach. Thus the combination of distance learning and practical training in the field between the cows. So theory is learned by students and professionals online in an adaptive and in an interactive digital learning environment. And the trainer or the teacher is acting more as a coach. And this combined with the practical skills development. And also after the trainings, we would like to continue. So monitor if it is implemented, what is learned. Well, apart from this learning impact, there are other advantages of this new approach. It is more efficient in terms of time of the trainers because they spend less time with the group. Therefore, it is cheaper and it is more sustainable. It is attractive for a young generation, what is very much needed. And it allows local capacity building. Thus, local trainers can give trainings, local teachers can teach with our knowledge. It is with the support of NFP that we are now exploring this in a project in East Africa called EarNet. It is mentioned in the paper, I think, yes, on page 46. In a consortium led by ERIS with Wageningen and also Van Hal, but also ICRA, and local TVETs and training institutions, we developed some learning pathways for formal and informal learning. And we piloted in 3 countries, in Ethiopia, Kenya, and Uganda. And the aim of the project is to have one central platform that can be used by anyone that wants to give trainings or teach. Well, the call for action based on this paper should lead, in our opinion, to continue this development. And in this COVID-19 era, where we stay at home and we don't travel, we see many initiatives in the development of digital learning materials, which is good. But we should watch out for too much fragmentation. I believe the success is captured in cooperation, in joint forces. If we are capable of connecting the initiative, we can lead to success and we can have impact. I would really appreciate it if we can further deepen this subject as Triple Dairy and see how we can move on to make a positive impact and thus contribute to dairy development. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nienke, for your kicking off this launch. I think it's a very valid point you're making on the strengthening future dairy professionals and also the blended learning aspect in that. And it's especially relevant, I think, in these times of COVID-19. Again, if you have any questions or comments, please put them in the chat and we'll address them during the Q&A. I've heard that Marcel Nijnatte is present.
Yeah.
So, welcome. Yes, I can hear you. I get a thumbs up of my co-host, so I think the people at the webinar also. Welcome, Marcel. If it's okay with you, I would like to give you the floor right away. So, Marcel Nijnatte is representing the Ministry of Agriculture, Nature and Food Quality, and also he will give his view on the action agenda from the ministry. So, Marcel, please go ahead.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much indeed for organizing this webinar and for the launch of the action agenda. I think it's very apt and very appropriate indeed. People have been working on it, as I know, for a number of years actually. And it turned out that in the current circumstances, it's all the more important that we do this kind of things, that we have this kind of projects. And I'll explain that a little bit from our point of view. I happened to be at a meeting with our minister on Wednesday on what would a post-corona, post-COVID-19 world look like. And one of the issues that she raised, and that is of prime importance to us, is that we need a more robust system, a more robust food system, if you want. What's happening now is that actually the COVID pandemic makes a sort of an X-ray of the food system and ruthlessly shows us where the weak links in the chains and in the food system actually are. And one of the issues that, of course, is all important or has come forward is the issue of labor, people being able to go to work, being able to actually access their work for markets, local markets at first and foremost, of course, but also international markets, to be able to function properly. In order to ensure that people indeed get food, get access to food, and indeed get access to healthy food. What we see at the moment is that bulk production basically is, for the moment, available to most of the people, but actually healthy food, very labor-intensive food, is turning out to be a problem. And that is one of the issues that is also addressed in this action agenda, and I think turns out at the moment to be one of the more vulnerable parts in our food system. Stepping back a little bit from the current situation, what you see a lot in terms of the dairy market indeed is that there is a lot of research going on the sustainability project, the sustainability aspect of dairy and indeed of meat production, which is different but related to it. We have seen the IPCC and IPBES reports, and it deals a lot with the actual footprint of agricultural products, basically also for fodder, and we need to address that. That is an issue in terms of loss of biodiversity, in terms of climate change, and in terms simply of the number of hectares available to us. The action agenda actually addresses that, and I think that is good. But I would like to highlight two things that for me are sort of conditions. Conditia sine qua non, so conditions that need to be addressed if it's going to be a success at all. And one is the keep milk safe leverage point. If that doesn't happen, you can have a success on all the other issues, and it's still not going to fly. It's still, you won't achieve your results. And the other one, and I just addressed a part of that, is make dairy sustainable. If you don't do it in a sustainable way, you may as well not do it at all, because in the long run, it's not going to fly. The other points on the action agenda are indeed a result of that. And that brings me to a number of things that I think we need to address. I do like the Dutch diamond approach, where you bring people together, and that is all important. If you don't do it together, especially with local stakeholders, and from the poll we've just seen in this at the entry of this webinar, there are a number of local stakeholders available or participating now. But I would like to see that stronger in the project. And I assume that a lot of the people participating here are not local farmers. Now that of course is not the audience of this webinar, I fully understand that. But I think it is all important to be actually relevant for the people in the field. And that is how to approach them, how to get them involved, how to make sure that they are actually able to produce that sustainable, safe milk and to be able to access that market for food security. That is the key, that is the heart of the Dutch Diamond approach. So I would urge everybody to take that to account when you're all working together. Don't forget the people you're actually working for. And second, it's more...
Marcel, sorry to interrupt you, but you only have 1 more minute left. So
okay, that leaves me with one remark.
Okay.
Can we actually define when this program is a success? And coming to that, what is the exit strategy? When is it a success, and when are we satisfied that now we have a system, part of a food system that actually can work on its own and further the objectives as set out by this action agenda? Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Marcel, for giving this interesting point of view from the ministry. I think it's very interesting that you really highlight some key areas in the action agenda, but also this invitation, just as Karen was mentioning in her introduction, to local stakeholders, but also to stakeholders here to really do it together and not forget these local stakeholders. So thank you very much, Marcel. Now the floor is open for a Q&A session.
Yes, well, good morning, everybody. Yeah, the floor is open, but we also control the interaction. So I'll just read a couple of questions from in the chat, and I'd like to invite both Nienke and Marcel van Eijnatten to unmute or to keep unmuted and to respond to the question. So the first one is from Ad Merks, Hollandor. He's in the Asia dairy development. So his question: what's new in the report? So what's different from what we have been doing the last 25 years? That's one question. But then his next remark is on the focus on education and practical training at MBO level. Oh, sorry, MBO is vocational level, TVET level in.
Yes.
So maybe ladies first, Nienke.
Yes, ladies first. Very good. Well, what's new, I think, it's what I put forward, is that despite of all the efforts that has been made, we still see the need for transformation. And in fact, well, from my focus point is then this education. I think a new approach can have more impact. And if we do it together, if we join forces, like Karin also said, I think we can make a difference. So perhaps the questions are not new, but the approach should be new and should be innovative to have other impact.
Okay, thank you. Marcel?
Yes, I would like to go into the matter of the vocational training, because I think that's all important. As I highlighted, it's important to reach the people on the ground, and often we focus on university and high-level, high-tech solutions, which are great and they really contribute. But the point and the proof of the pudding is, do you get the knowledge to the people that actually are working in the field? And often, not always, but often, what you see is that a little bit of low-tech or mid-tech solutions and educating people in the field can have a tremendous impact. So vocational training is high on the agenda of the ministry. Our Director General, Marjolein Sonnema, always mentioned this when we travel with her abroad. Okay,
thank you. Yeah, there's a remark from Cow Signals. That's on blended learning. Well, if there is something new in these past years, then the blended learning is there. And still another remark from Ad Merks on the OVO triangle. And I have to explain to the non-Dutch, that's the triangle of coordination between education, extension, and research. the basis for the Dutch success in dairy and other agricultural sectors. I'm not sure. Let's see if there's some more questions. Otherwise, I'm also looking at the watch, and we promised 1 hour, so we maybe better go to the poll. What do you think, Judith?
Yes, I agree, because we have another Q&A later on, so then we can see if there's any additional questions.
Yes, I encourage you to put your questions, even if you have questions for the lead editor, Karin. She's not with us, but we'll make sure that we'll take your questions along and put them in the report. Well, with an answer, of course, as far as possible. Yes? Okay, then we quickly, it's, well, what is the time here? Yep, we quickly, I wanted to open a second poll. So we had one at the start, the welcome one. We have one at the end, and this one is in the middle. We just want to test your opinion on a few things. Oops, this session is, oh, my poll is not working here. Oh. Oh, too bad.
I can try it.
Yes, can you? Can you open the poll, Judith? It's not working on my laptop.
Yeah, I go.
Yes, yeah. I see it. Hope everybody sees the poll. It's 7 questions or statements where we want to see your opinion. Please go ahead. We'll take 4 minutes, and then we'll show the results immediately afterwards.
And please, if you have any questions or comments, put them in the chat. We have also some other people attending who really worked closely on this paper, so we can also address them with questions instead of Karin. So. So let's take 1 final minute to fill the poll. All right, so I've ended the polling. Let's have a look at the results. So the first question was on the dairy for nutrition. What does that mean in Africa and Asia, and what is the top priority? Well, I see that a lot of you, of course, put all of the above because the options were school milk, milk dispensers, and intra-household distribution. These are also issues that are mentioned in the paper as being top priorities for dairy for nutrition. So if you really want to improve nutrition, school milk, milk dispensers, and intra-household distribution are examples of things that worked in recent years. So I see that a lot of people agree and also say all of the above. That is what we should be working on if we really want to focus on dairy for nutrition. The second question was on poor dairy processes in Asia and Africa. Is it not better for them to sell their milk and buy back cheaper proteins if we talk about healthy diets? I see a little bit of a majority on the agree, but also a large proportion of people says disagree. So this is still, I think, an interesting point of debate. The third one is the dairy and inclusiveness. If producer organizations get more success, this will eventually mean crowding out of disadvantaged groups. Also here you see, that not a big majority says agree or disagree, but we see that that is more or less equal, but also a lot of people have no opinion on this. So it might be that producer organizations are not crowding out the disadvantaged groups, or this is a statement that is that should be other or formulated in another way. The fourth is youth employment. If we want to do something about youth employment, it's really about providing services in the dairy sector and not on the production itself. And here we see a large number of people agreeing with this statement. And you see also a tendency in youth that production is, they find it a hard man's job, earning little money, and there's a lot of urbanization. So I think providing services is, by a lot of people, one of the solutions if we want to really create youth employment. The fifth statement was on dairy for sustainability in Africa and Asia. The carbon emissions is a good indicator. A little bit of a majority says, I agree, but there are also a lot of people disagreeing with the statements. Resource efficient food system in Africa and Asia feed dairy animals as if they were waste bins. No opinion and disagreement is here on this statement. What we see. And then the last one is related to COVID-19. What do we see as results of this pandemic? And we see a large number of people actually indicated the lower consumption of dairy, but also small scale and alternative ways of marketing of dairy. A lot of people say that will be the results. Well, this is just a quick and dirty way of just getting your opinion a little bit on these issues. I think it's also topics that we can discuss more on, but these are also important topics in the paper and the position paper. All right, so let me go back to the presentation because we have two more speakers actually who will say something about the action agenda. And the first one is Robert Baars. He is working at Van Gaal Larenstein University of Applied Sciences. And he will say something about what do we actually need to make this action agenda work. So welcome, Robert. I would like to hand over the floor to you. If Robert is here. Maybe he's still on mute. Robert? Okay, I look at my co-host. I think he's going to work it out. Then I think for now we go to the fourth speaker.
Yeah, I think, can you hear me now?
Oh yes, Robert, I hear you, yes.
Yeah,
great.
Okay.
Welcome, Robert.
Sorry for
Go ahead.
Yeah, thank you very much. I had to be unmuted by you. Well,
Okay.
thank you very much for the invitation to reflect on the position paper and on the action agenda. Basically, I was asked to focus on leverage point 4 to make dairy sustainable. So that is also what I will do. First, I would like to say that, the more I understand about dairy, the more complex it seems. And that is true for the Netherlands, also for Africa and Asia. sometimes you have a successful development, but it will affect another. So they're counterproductive. But at the same time, I think we should not get lost in this complexity, and to have a clear agenda like we have in this position paper will really help us to lead to a positive change. So that's why I'm very happy with the efforts of so many experts that are all accumulating in this document. And in general, I would say that I'm very happy with the content of the position paper and the action agenda. So I have selected 3 topics on which I would like to reflect and which I would like to place in a broader or maybe other perspective. The first one is the issue of trade-offs. And then first, I have to say something about the dairy situation in the Netherlands, because the Dutch dairy sector is worldwide considered as one of the best examples to manage intensive dairy farms, but also to effectively organize farmers in the chain. And yes, we have had high levels of production, enormous good export results, and also a very high reputation. But the trade-off of the Dutch export model is the impact on the environment. And particularly nowadays, we're talking about the emissions of ammonia and methane. And we have achieved a lot of improvements over the last 20 years when it comes to this topic, but still a lot needs to be done. And today's agenda in the Netherlands when it comes to dairy, it is about the trade-offs. It's only the trade-offs that are filling the agenda. So when we are transforming about the dairy sector worldwide, there are 2 camps. There is one situation of the Netherlands and countries alike with high dairy reputations, where we have to maybe think even of less export in the future. And we have other countries in Africa and Asia where we have to focus on intensifying production. The food system approach itself, which is mentioned in the report, it is mentioning the trade-offs many times, but it doesn't say how to deal with it, and it is also very complex. But for me, one statement in the report which I like very much is that dairy production should be coupled to land, and actually land for feed production. And I think this is conditional if you want to have farming, let's say ecological farming, or if you want to improve circular nutrient cycles, or if you want to promote climate dairy farming. So this leaves also little potential for urban farming systems. And manure needs a special attention. We have a lot of manure in the Netherlands. We even export it. But if I see how manure is being used in Africa and Asia, it is a waste. It is not reused in the system. So there's a lot to improve in that particular field. And a nice example for the difficult issue of trade-offs is also what to do with the manure. Is it the best to use it in biogas? Or is it the best to use it as soil fertilizer for carbon sequestration in the soil? You cannot do both. So here there is an interesting issue, and I don't have a clear answer. A second issue I would like to discuss is the parameter, the CO2 equivalent per liter of fat and protein corrected milk. There is in the document a nice graph where we can see that in Western countries, including the Netherlands, we are very successful because we have a low emission per liter of milk. And in Africa and Asia, there's a lot that needs to be improved because of the emissions are very high per liter of milk. But if you look further, then you see that this nice result, a nice parameter, is taking place in a situation where we are challenged with a lot of environmental challenges. So this parameter is nice, but it cannot be used in isolation. We need to have more parameters that we have to combine with it. If you would develop a practical parameter that is saying CO2 equivalent per hectare of land used for dairy, you will get a totally different picture. So this is something I want to be careful with using that parameter only. And if I look at successful dairy value chain developments, for example, in Kenya, where you can be very proud of the developments, you also see there that there is a problem with manure accumulation. And you also see that the importation of feed is becoming a normal business there. So they are copying not only the good things of the Netherlands, but also, I would say, the trade-offs. So we have to work on that issue.
Sorry.
The last thing
Okay, fine.
Yeah.
Great. Yes.
Last thing is, maybe this is a short one. If I look at the 7 World Bank principles that are mentioned, 5 of them are very technical. 1 is on policy and 1 is on enabling environment. And maybe, and also going to the question of Admerks, a lot of things are not new when it comes to the technical issues, but maybe the focus should be more in the future on the enabling environment. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Robert. Very interesting, and also content-wise, very interesting feedback also on the action agenda. I think you mentioned a lot of interesting points, like the complexity and the trade-offs, that we really need to look at the trade-offs with an interesting example of the manure, and also the parameters should not be used in isolation. And maybe this paper and the technical issues are not new, but really this and the enabling environment is of key importance when it comes to dairy development. So thank you again, Robert, for your feedback. Then we go to the last speaker of today, which is Rinus van Klinken. He is working at SNV and he's also part of the NEADAP coalition. Rinus, please.
Okay, good morning. Thank you for this opportunity. Indeed, I'm talking compose compose a diet for cows that is nutrition rich, but also can look at methane gas emissions and as a way of also reducing that. And
Okay,
of course for farm. Yeah,
sorry to interrupt you, but I think we have to round up.
That's right. So the final point for farmers to be able to work comfortable with those sort of concepts of rations, and they need to be professional. So the professionalization of the farming community, not only through the partly also through the blended learning initiatives that have been mentioned, but also through practical daily training farms. So supporting farmers on the farm to improve their insights and their knowledge is part of that agenda. Thank you.
Right. Great. Thank you so much, Rinas, also for this reflection on the paper and the action agenda. Indeed, NEADAP as a coalition played an important role in initiating this position paper and also contributed to it very much. I think the idea of harvesting the Dutch knowledge to be used in dairy development is something that is really well done with this position paper. So thank you very much. Then we go to the second Q&A. So I'll hand over to Wim to see what has been addressed in the chat and whether there are any questions for the speakers or for maybe the authors of the position paper.
Yes, thank you. I've seen a few questions and remarks. One is from Ari Keizer, Agromisa. He refers to the long-standing tradition of Agromisa booklets and in local languages, easy to read, practical, and the new way of channeling these messages by video clips and by telephone. Well, and even or the way we are meeting today is is the new normal, I would say. So this is maybe contemplated in the part on blended learning. I would like to ask both Robert and Rinus for their reflection on a point made by Mella Leenstra. He's the agriculture counselor in Cairo. He's also one of the masterminds behind Nell's Food Partnership in his previous position. His question is on the water footprint of dairy, and that's of course a concern in the Middle Eastern countries. So, Robert.
Yeah. Okay. Let me try to react to it. Yeah, it's a good point. I have not considered it in my reflection, and I have also not really seen it in the report. Yep. As a main concern. For me, one key element here is we should, and this is a general thing worldwide, we should not aim to have dairy everywhere. It is per definition true that if you want to have a good dairy system, you should try to do this in areas where there is good access to water. But in many cases, good access to water dairy is then competing with the human food agenda. But I think it is depending on the region whether this is an important aspect or not. So, for example, water in the Netherlands is not really a serious point of the agenda. But when you look at more drier areas, of course, I'm also thinking about pastoral systems, which are hardly mentioned, but where we cannot have any other form of agriculture. And there the water footprint is very positive, of course. But I think this is something that we should also probably develop as kind of new parameter in evaluating how successful we are in terms of footprint.
Okay. Yes, thank you, Robert. I see we have only 8 minutes left, so I see the discussion on the chat now going on its own. We'll keep the chat open after the meeting, but we close the webinar at 11. So, with your permission, host, I'd like to go to the next point. And
Yes.
that's the call to action. And just to a small contribution on what we, and that's all the contributors to this position paper, what we want to do with it. It's first on the process that's on the slide now shared. So we have had a number of events, and we expect to have new events coming up, inspired by the whole process and the sharing of insights and ideas for actions for the coming years. Today we're still agri-pro-focus and food and business knowledge platform. This will transform into the Netherlands Food Partnership. But we're already started working in support of dairy and development, and also for other sectors where Dutch knowledge and expertise can have a meaningful contribution to SDG 2, Zero Hunger. We're happy with the result today, with the launch of the paper and with all the contributions. And we're happy for two reasons. First, it lays the groundwork, this overview and this reflections. It's an overview of what's happening and trending in the dairy sector, in the Dutch contribution to the dairy sectors. But it's also an action agenda, and that's a guide to all of us. So we see the 6 leverage points as an invitation to work together on that. Netherlands Food Partnership aims to support coalitions that have transformative propositions. So that would also be applicable to the dairy sector. Let me explain that a coalition for us, it's a strong collective with a direction. And you just heard NEADAP. There's that's a coalition we're happy to support. There's another coalition on blended learning, as Nienke Dijkstra explained. We're happy to support more of these coalitions to get them started. Yeah. These coalitions, they consist of stakeholders, and they're needed to make these transformations to happen. And transformation is needed to meet the targets of SDG 2. Yeah. So our offer is from the Netherlands Food Partnership. We are ready to help you, to support you, to connect you to people and knowledge around the innovations and the potential to scale. So if you have an idea for a coalition or a transformative idea in one of these 6 leverage points, well, or even a 7th one, we're happy to get in touch. So we're happy to get in touch and to help you start and accelerate your contribution to SDG 2.
Thank you, Wim, for also a brief invitation of the Netherlands Food Partnership to please contact us if you want to collaborate and if you as a coalition need support. We're always open to discuss possibilities and to see how we can bring this action agenda further. So then we've come to the end of this this webinar, this launch. I would like to thank all of you for joining. I would like to especially thank the speakers of today, so Marcel, Dienke, Rinus, and Robert for contributing, being here. The next steps for us would be on World Food Day. Then we as a Netherlands Food Partnership hope to present the next steps of this learning journey on dairy for development. Again, we like to invite you to contact us. You see our email addresses in this presentation, but we'll also share our contact details. And thank you all for listening. We have a last evaluation poll, which I will open now to see to get your opinion on this webinar. Thanks again, everyone, for listening, for being here, and I hope we'll be in contact. Thank you very much.